Hello guys and welcome to today's video, and today's video is something a lot of you have been requesting from me, which is a best Battlefield settings plus Gamesir G7 Pro setup that is tailor-made for Battlefield 6. I'm going to be covering both in these videos, first off starting with the Gamesir G7 Pro, and down below if you don't want to see this part of the video where I discuss the Gamesir G7 Pro and the settings that I have tailor-made for Battlefield 6, then feel free to skip. I do have some timestamps down below to those all-important Battlefield 6 settings, both controller settings, graphics settings, dead zones, aim sensitivity, you name it. We cover it all today, but it is just going to be a brief guide. I'm not going to explain things in detail. I'm just going to kind of share with you what I am currently using in Battlefield 6 with the Gamesir G7 Pro and my all-important Battlefield 6 best settings and controller settings. But let's start with the Gamesir G7 Pro. As you can see, the button mapping, it's all pretty much the same. A is A, B is B. The only thing that's really important is R4 down there, which is the paddle, of course. I have set to A. This is so I can jump in gunfights, which realistically isn't really that important in Battlefield 6. Like, Battlefield 6 is not a game where you do jump shots and that. But if you want to mantle and stuff and do things quickly without having to take your thumb off the thumbstick to press the button, I still have R4 set to A to be able to do that. I might mess around with this a bit more and add some more utility to the button mapping that I have, like the paddles. For instance, B is quite useful with crouching, sliding, etc. But we have changed that in those all-important Battlefield 6 settings, which you will see later on. But this is the sort of stuff that you guys are going to be looking for, which is very, very important because Battlefield 6, you're going to want to have some very precise aim and be able to shoot at those short ranges and those long ranges. So left stick, we've just left it initial max and zero. The initial and max is 0 and 100, 0 and 100. Curve adjustment is left the same, but we have set it to raw because, as you can see, as soon as I press the thumbstick, which I unfortunately don't have a hand cam for you to see, it registers my input. And I can do the slightest adjustments at the flick of a finger, just like that. Like, it doesn't matter. I can just make a very slight adjustment or a maximum adjustment. It registers my input to the absolute T. And that's why also on the right stick, we have changed it a little bit. Okay, so the dead zones are set to 2 and 100, which I'd highly recommend, because if you have it set to 0, it's far too sensitive. So do not have this set to 0, but have it set to 2 and 100. This bit though, I have left at 0 and 100. And then curve adjustment, as you can see, we have changed it to the third option and then set it to 80. This pretty much gives you the feeling of dynamic. This is going to be used across all games, and this gives you the exact same feeling in Battlefield 6, along with the aim settings that we do have in Battlefield 6 itself, which we'll discuss in a second. And the stick trajectory is also at raw because, as you can see, I can make those fine adjustments. So if I'm at the long ranges and I'm trying to take down people and, want to make those fine adjustments, or at short range, I want to make those maximum inputs really quickly, I can do so when using the stick trajectory on raw. Next up, triggers. We've got these set to 0 and 100, 0 and 100. Curve adjustment again is fine, and hair trigger we've got off on the left trigger, and I don't have the trigger stop on the left trigger. However, on the right trigger, I do have the trigger stop on. So basically, as soon as I press the trigger with the hair trigger mode on, which is set to the fixed mode, but again, these are 0 and 100, 0 and 100, and 0 and 100. But as soon as I hit the trigger, that is it. I've done a full press, and this is going to be useful for semi-auto weapons. It's going to be useful to just firing the weapon quickly, etc. I've got the fixed trigger mode set on the right trigger to be the maximum press and everything. Basically, as soon as I press the trigger, I will be hitting a maximum input and firing the weapon as quick as possible and instantly. And then finally, the vibration, have this all off. I've said this many, many times before. You do not need the vibration on. Yes, there's an immersive feeling to play in Battlefield 6, which you might like, but you're going to damage your controller in the long run, and you have to replace your controller over time. The vibrations in controllers do damage the controllers quite quickly, and over time will damage the controller, meaning you will have to get a new controller in the future. So definitely have this off, and you don't need the controller shaking around in your hand whilst you're trying to shoot. So that is it. That is a very quick explanation into my Gamesir G7 Pro settings. We are now going to move on to those all-important Battlefield 6 settings, which again, I'm just going to show you what I'm rocking at the moment and give you a very brief explanation of all the settings that I'm currently rocking here in Battlefield 6. But let's get into it. Let's cut to those all-important Battlefield 6 controller settings, graphics settings, you name it. Let's get into it. Let's cut to them. Right, and welcome guys to the second part of today's video, the most important part of today's video, which are those all-important Battlefield 6 best settings. I'm not going to discuss in too much detail my settings currently because these are subject to change at the moment. These are just what I've settled on and I'm having quite a bit of success with so far here in Battlefield 6. And again, yes, I do use these alongside my Gamesir G7 Pro settings. If you have the ability to mix both together, then do so. But if you don't have a Gamesir G7 Pro, don't worry, these settings will also work for you also. So let's get get into it. Accessibility, nothing too crazy. Have these off. That, leave it as alone. Color profiles, these are important though. Definitely change these around. Try and make the colors pop a bit more. I'd suggest like just making these colors a little bit more brighter so that things like pop out a bit more. World brightness, I've got set to 55. Anywhere between 50 and 60 probably is where you should have that. Camera effects, these are important. These do affect your aim, so make sure you got these changed. But world motion blur, weapon motion blur, have these set to 0. Infantry hard motion set to off. Camera shake amount to the least amount, which is 50. Reduce sprint camera bobbing to on. And then chromatic aberration off. And infantry crosshair projection, both of those off. Keep going down, hold and toggle for controls. You've got some small things here you need to change, but crouch toggle sprint, set this to crouch, and then finally double tap crouch for sprint slide, have that off. Everything else you can leave alone. You can change interact and reload if you really want to, but I've left it on prioritize interact for me. Controller vibration, have this off. You do not need the controller vibrating whilst you're trying to play and shoot. Everything else you do not really need here, does not matter whatsoever. Next up, let's move into the really important stuff, the gameplay elements, which are really important. So again, hold and toggle, it's the same stuff, so you don't need to change that. But infantry aim sensitivity, this is obviously very, very important, so make sure you got this set to the sensitivity you want to have. But anywhere between 35 and 42 is what I'd recommend so far from my feel and play so far of Battlefield 6. You can go higher if you really want to, but if you're missing a few shots and you want to make sure you're just nailing it down a bit before you start bumping up your sensitivity, go between 35 and 42 for now. Again, crouch toggle sprint, we've got set to crouch, and then that's set to off. Everything else is left to default, nothing crazy here. Vehicles, I'm not really using vehicles in the game, so this doesn't really matter to me. I don't really use the vehicles, but if you're one of those people who uses vehicles, you might want to mess around with that a little bit. But aim assist, so infantry aim input curve, I've got set to Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. It seems to be the best curve that I've found. I've got them set to 100 as well on the aim assist slowdown and snap, etc. So definitely just leave that as it is. Infantry zoom input curve, again, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4, left that on 100. Vehicle aim input curve, I mean, it says Battlefield 2042 old. Again, I'm not really using the vehicles, so this isn't something I've really messed around with, if I'm completely honest. But yep, moving on, we're going to move on to the controller settings, the all-important controller settings, and there's a lot here to digest because these are really, really important for your aiming and obviously how you're going to be able to work in gunfights. So make sure you pay attention to this part of the video. Again, infantry aim sensitivity, I've got it at 40. Field of view, anywhere between 100 and 110 is what I'd go for. I wouldn't go anywhere below 100. It just feels too slow. It doesn't feel like you have the ability to really turn, and the aim assist is really, really thick and just seems to like stop you from being able to like, how would I put it, like aim and move your aim around correctly. So anywhere between 100 and 110. Vertical aim ratio, these are actually set correctly, so leave these as default, which should be at 56, 178 here as well for the zoom sensitivity coefficient. Uniform infantry aiming, obviously have this on. Infantry aim assist, all of this on. Again, infantry input curve, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4, and then stick input acceleration presets. You want Battlefield 4, Battlefield 3, or Battlefield Bad Company. And set your aiming left, right acceleration to 12. Anywhere between 10 and 12 seems to be the right spot in this game, so go with that. Again, nothing too crazy here. That's set to crouch. Slide, I have set to right stick to input by pressing the pressing in the right stick, sorry. So that's so you can slide whilst having your thumb still on the thumbstick, so I'd do that personally. Double tap crouch for sprint slide, have that off. You don't want to be pressing that. Infantry aim sensitivity, I've got it slightly set to 90, so this is normally on 100. I've made it a little bit lower. You guys can mess around with this a little bit if you want to. I'd say anywhere between 85 and 100, but I've went with 90 so far, and then I've left these all alone. So the reason I've changed this is so that I don't have to change all of these individually. So I've left them for now. Everything else here, not really that important. You don't change, so leave that alone. But next up, buttons, there should be... oh, you can't even actually click on it. But, oh yeah, here. So again, nothing too crazy, but you will find that the sliding mechanic is simply changed to right stick. Same with crouch, press, and hold. I've also got that set to the right stick as well, so I don't have to take my thumb off of the thumbstick. What else? Vehicles, nothing too crazy. Aircraft, again, I'm not going to share these settings because I haven't really messed with these because I'm not someone who messes around with them. But controller tuning, this is something that you want to get down. So controller vibration, have that off. Vibration intensity, all off. Again, vibration off. Your left stick and right stick dead zones. I've got these set to center dead zone 2 with axial dead zone 5. Max input threshold, both 100. And again, center dead zone 2, axial dead zone 5. And then controller triggers, I've got left dead zone set to 0 and the max threshold 5. So as soon as I press it, basically I'm getting a full press on both of these. So 0 and 5 for both. Again, nothing too crazy here. So that is it really for the controller settings. Mouse and keyboard, unfortunately, I don't have anything for you, but I can move on to those all-important graphic settings. If you want to have better frame rate, etc., you want to have, a higher frame rate, you want to have this on performance, not balanced, so you can get that 120 FPS. Next up, world brightness, again, I got 55. UI brightness and sharpness is at 50 and 50. Field of view, again, 110 still. Weapon field of view, though, this is important. This makes it look like you have less... so you don't have less visual recoil, so less recoil, but you do get less visual recoil having it like this. So definitely have it set to wide. Again, have these set to 0 and the least amount. These need to be turned off as well. The Vignette, oh, God, I don't know how you pronounce that, but or the vignette, I don't know. Put that to off though, that's all that matters. And film grain, also have that off. Show HUD have on, and infantry HUD motion and vehicle HUD motion both have off. Again, crosshairs and indicators, these are important as well. Make sure you're setting these correctly. You can change your crosshair color if you really want to. I've left mine on white so far. I might change it over time, but if you want to change that to something else like green or blue or something to it stands out a bit more, you can do. But so far I went with white for now. Nothing else too crazy here, really. That is it, really. And then we move on to audio. So the master volume, sound effects volume, music volume I've got set to 0, but realistically I've left it as it is. Battlefield's a very immersive feeling game anyway, or sounding game, so you just hear explosions most of the time anyway. But that is mainly all the settings here. I'm just going to make sure I haven't skipped over anything too important. But that is pretty much it. There isn't anything too crazy. These are the settings that I'm currently rocking. Again, these are subject to change, so that's why I've kind of just went over them briefly. Again, I might mess around with the vehicle stuff when I actually put some time into using the vehicles in the game. Again, so far, I've just been working on my aim, my controller settings, just so I can aim and, you know, do well in gunfights, etc. But as you can see, we are doing all right so far in Battlefield 6. I've had some pretty good games so far. And these are the controller settings that I have settled on for right now. So if you guys want to know anything more or need some help with your settings, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try and help as best I possibly can. But again, I'm pairing these with my Gamesir G7 Pro, with those all-important Gamesir G7 Pro settings, and these Battlefield 6 settings to get the best possible aim in Battlefield 6. But any questions, leave them down below. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe next on. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye.